April LaJune, welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. Great having you on. You look like someone who has the attitude of a die-hard American patriot, and that's certainly someone that I want to get on my show now, considering that for all intents and purposes, America is in a American Revolution slash Civil War and will be until April 8th, 2024, if the solar eclipse astrology significance of that date plays out. And a lot has been said about you. Your work is certainly, you're very passionate about what you do. A lot of things that you say, very interesting and intriguing. But then again, there's a lot of people that are going to raise eyebrows and think that, well, it's only a matter of time, dare I say it, before this lady becomes the next Winston Shrout. Well, I hope you don't suffer the same fate that that man did. But some of the material that you talk about is related to what he does and all. So I'm going to give you the chance to talk about that in due time in this interview. But first, for those that don't know about you and what you do and what you've researched and what causes you to discover the stuff that you did, to talk about the stuff that you talk about and do the journalistic work you do, the radio stuff that you do, you got the floor now to tell your life story from a primary source perspective. I will shut up, put myself on mute, and let you talk away. And I don't have Alex Jones-itis. I will not interrupt you.
Well, it's okay if you decide that you want to ask your questions. Perfectly fine. So I don't like things that are unfair. Let's just put it that way. So when I was younger, I experienced a lot of things that I thought were unfair. Now, since I'm older, I know that the world isn't fair. It's just not a fair play, although I would like it to be. But I think there's a lot of times that people aren't doing anything wrong and they get railroaded by bad publicity sometimes. Doesn't even bother me at all. But it interrupts their family lives. They become financially hurt. They suffer legal problems for no reason other than tyrannical government. I've seen that over and over again. Or they get their children taken away from them for no reason other than some bureaucrat is related to some other bureaucrat and they don't like you. I've actually experienced that myself. And, so there's just various things that have happened in my life that I thought, you know what, this is just not fair. And if it's happening to me, I'm just a regular person. I'm just a regular person. So if anything's happened, if some of these things are happening to me, then that means they're happening to other regular people who aren't doing anything wrong. So anyway, through a series of events, I discovered through journalism, because I became a journalist because I wanted to know stuff. Well, through a series of events, somebody sent me an article about Heather Tucci and Randy Bean. And I really put it to the side for a while because I didn't, I knew it had something to do with, they transferred some money. He tried to buy a vehicle, like a big old RV or something, for $500,000. And the feds got him and all this kind of thing. And I thought, there's got to be a reason something doesn't sound right. So as I was reading the article about Heather Tucci and Randall Bean, everybody was saying the feds were nabbing him because he moved money from his Social Security number, and it was $1 million, and he put it in CDs, and he did this and he did that, and then he cashed it out, and he went and bought this RV, and the feds nabbed him when he went to get it. And I thought, don't you think the first question should be, how did he move the money from his Social Security account in the first place? If it's in his Social Security account, wouldn't that mean that it's his money? I thought those were the obvious questions, and nobody was asking that question. So because that to me is the very first part of the story. The rest of it, to me, is kind of a little insignificant until you find out what the first thing is. So I wanted to know, if this money is in his name, in his Social Security number, how was he able to move $1 million? That didn't make any sense. And through more research, I found out that we had these bank accounts that were attached to our names that the government actually put in place for their benefit, using our ID, our birth certificates to do it. The first thing they did was they gave us these birth certificates, then they said they gave them to our parents, who are the legal guardians and authorized representatives of tiny babies, and duped them and said, you know, this certificate makes you a United States citizen. Now you have full benefit of being a United States citizen. What they didn't tell them is that a United States citizen is a part of a corporation. And under legal definition, that's what it is. So they give them a birth certificate, which is a subrogation bond, really. It's kind of a deed, but it's more like a subrogation bond because they're substituting something for it. They're giving you a certificate, and they're taking your ID. So I consider that a subrogation bond. And it's got, some people say 800,000 to $1 million on it when you're born. Who knows? They're not going to ever tell you that. And then they just keep trading it like the smoke and mirrors traders on Wall Street, pushing around digits all day long to the highest bidder. They just keep doing that. And they put a $5,000 bond on you every month. Every month they take out another $5,000 bond. So the older you are, the more money you have. And when I started looking at this excuse me, you could actually go into Fidelity Investments and put in your Social Security number, and that would come bond. Excuse me. So as I look at it, you're not going to see every bond you have, but you can see some. I saw that I had a $53 billion with a B dollar bond and a $26 billion bond. Well, within 2 weeks of me finding that, Fidelity shut down their site so that portion of their site can look anymore. Which I thought it was odd that they had done it so quickly. And then somebody else said that you could link your bank account and pay your bills, online with the bank account. And so I thought, let me see. And they also said that it would get reversed later on. Well, the reason I know it's true is because I actually made a mistake the first time I tried it. And the computers have autofill. Now, I think if it wouldn't have gone the first time, if it would have gone the first time, I probably wouldn't really thought that much about it. But since it did go the first time, it really confirmed to me that the bank account is there, because it happened to be my utility company. And so I turned over the back of my Social Security card, and there's a letter there, and that letter matches up to the Federal Reserve branch. Found the routing number for that particular branch and put it in the routing number that they were asking me so that I could pay the bank account, through the bank account. And on the account number portion, I put my Social Security number. Well, the first thing that popped up was, this is not a real account, or something, that message that you get that this is not an account. And I thought, okay, well, then they're probably wrong. And then I thought, well, let me try that again. Just see if maybe I put in one of the numbers wrong. So I put in the routing number again, that was fine. And then I started to put in my Social Security number, and I found out that I put it in wrong. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll put it in the right way, maybe it'll pop up. Sure enough, it popped up. Because the only way I would have known that it wasn't a bank account is if my real Social Security number didn't go also. But because it did, I thought, wow, this is crazy. So anyway, it paid the bill, then it reversed it, whatever. I think it reversed it 2 months later, whatever. It doesn't matter. And then I thought, well, let me see, because they were saying you could put it into Amazon and, you could buy stuff, which I thought was dumb to buy it, because I was watching everybody and their packages were not going anywhere, or whatever they were doing. It was just all messed up. So I thought, well, at least you can try and see if the bank account's there. You don't have to buy anything with it, just see if it's there. So I put it in. Sure enough, up top, PNC Bank. I thought, okay, that's weird. Maybe it's just a fluke thing again. So I tried it in Google Wallet, because it was Google Wallet at the time. Sure enough, up pops PNC Bank. And I thought, now that is not a coincidence, because it can mathematically not be a coincidence that every single time you put it in, up pops PNC Bank in Chicago. I mean, at some point you would think that something's going to go awry. Now, I never used the bank account. I never tried to buy anything. It just confirmed to me that it was actually there. And so then I thought, okay, so this is actually worth looking at closer. And then I discovered that basically our entire system of living, banking, whatever you do, court stuff, all of those kinds of things, are related to money. It's all about money. The school system is related to money. Just anything you do when you go and get a loan, even though it's related to money, it is related to money, but that's a false thing too, because the banks can't lend you money. I'm like, what do you mean the banks can't lend you money? And so, you know, in researching various bankers who are ex-bankers, because they didn't like railroading people into things that they knew were bogus, they said that the loans, there's no money. And it's just a scam. And all they do is they put pieces of paper to the note that you sign. They go over to your account, which is obviously there, take the money out, and go pay off whatever it is, and then try to make you pay it again. So the bank is in effect using your signature to put a credit into the bank. And the bank, all this stuff about credit is just a bogus thing. It's not even real. They try to make you run on this little hamster wheel to pretend, oh, you got to get your credit up, when in fact, everybody's credit should be pristine because they got billions of dollars connected to their name. And they really don't owe anything. I researched the bankruptcy in 1913 and 33. And then the series of events that have happened in history, all coerced to make us think that we are debtors and that we have to help the government. Taxes, that we have to help the government. Where do you think your stimulus check is coming from now? Donald Trump's trying to wake you up. So you go, okay, how is the government able to still function at top speed under Donald Trump, and we just gave out trillions of dollars in money to every single person because the Democrats are sitting there and saying, COVID, it's a COVID emergency. And so Donald Trump's taking advantage of it and saying, okay, so why don't we just give everybody money? And then maybe we can wake them up that way. And now they're even talking about giving us more money. So, and a bigger check, because technically you shouldn't owe anything. There's nothing you should owe. And that just, to me, is really deceptive. And I can't stand deceit. I can't stand liars. And these people who are saying things about me on the online that are bad, it's just because they're either, one, they're being paid by the deep state, because it's all deep state. It's either the deep state or it's not. It's either good or it's evil. And evil doesn't want you to know that you're really in a good position if you push back, because it's all about money and power. So they're either getting paid or they're just completely ignorant of what's going on. They're so indoctrinated, they can't wrap their minds around the fact that they've been deceived from birth. And they can't, because the way you think things work is not the way at all. So I find it, how shall I say, I find myself getting really angry because people are they are so duped and so scammed by the things that are happening right in front of their eyes. And what they think they see is not what they actually see. And once you know what's really going on, you can see it, and you just want to wake people up so that they can have a better life. But some of them don't want a better life. Some of them are fine being slaves, wearing masks, doing crazy things. And I don't think there's any chance that I would be with Winston Trout, because Winston Trout, he thought that he was better than the taxes and all that kind of thing. But what he failed to understand is the straw man is still there and never dies. You're always going to have to deal with taxes because everything is taxes. And he wanted to defy that and not fill out the tax paperwork. If you fill out taxes and you work with the IRS, it can totally get to your advantage. So I think that's where he went awry, is trying to not work peaceably, not fill out the paperwork that they wanted. All they wanted him to do was fill out, I read the case. They just wanted him to fill out his tax form. That's it. They didn't ask him some crazy thing. They didn't ask him some odd deal and, something that was difficult to do. They only said that he made $18,000, it was like $18,400, something like that, in 4 years. I mean, that's not even any money whatsoever. And they asked him to file his taxes. That's it. He'd done that, and he wouldn't have had this big drama. But he thought that he could go in there and he could get out of it, which the straw man's still there. So a piece of paper isn't going to save you. But if you work with the company, is what I call them, you work with the company and you know how to do business, I think you'll be okay. I really think you are. It's going to be okay. Now, we didn't call it sovereign at first. We were calling it American nationalist. That's what Donald Trump was saying. American nationalist, secured party creditor. But lately, people are coming out and saying, no, you have sovereign rights. You have common law rights. And these people are lying to you when they tell you that things are law. And they're not law, especially this mask thing. I literally went into a store yesterday, and this girl says to me, ma'am, you need to wear a mask. You need to wear a mask. I said, I don't need to wear a mask. It's not a law. Oh, it's a law, she says. She's like 20-something. I said, no, it's not a law. In order to be a law, the governor would have to bring in the legislature. There would have to be a bill on the table, and they would all have to vote and agree to that to be a law. An executive order is not a law. And if you are a person who's a secured party creditor, it's a much easier ordeal to push back against that and say no than it is if you're not, because they consider you to be a citizen, which is not a sovereign, and they have jurisdiction over you. You have to literally tell them that they don't and that you're out and that the jig is up and you know what's going on. So she was kind of surprised that it wasn't a law. Now, whether she's going to go look or not, I highly doubt it. But people like to have peaceful lives. They allow an infringement upon themselves a little tiny bit at a time until they are completely oppressed and they don't even realize it. And I think that's very sad. It's getting to the point now where we can't even go anywhere. So, like I thought, I would like to go to the store and do a couple things, but I really just don't want to deal with having to explain to these people, carry around papers like we're in some kind of Nazi Germany, and say, no, I don't have to comply with that. I hope you get Jackson County Health and the cops. I would love you to bring them over as well, and we can have a little education session right here in your store if that's what you like to do. Sometimes I just don't feel like doing that. You know what I'm saying? You do realize.
Yes, I know what you're saying. And so I guess that means you want me to chime in here. So you mentioned the Heather Tucci and the whole thing about the documents she filed. Now, interesting thing, I might as well throw in my little story here regarding what I heard about what that was all about and how it ended up and what other people think about it. There was an episode of Rule of Law Radio with Randy Kelton where I decided to call in and ask Randy Kelton what he thought about the One People's Public Trust. He had never heard about it at the time. but I was reading off a website that was talking about it, and I believe this was back in like late 2013, early 2014, and I basically said they have foreclosed on all the governments and corporations. States that they claim that states of people are all children of the creator. There can be no being or entity with more authority than one public people's public trust except the creator. And then right as soon as I said that, Randy Kelton said, whoa, 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 hold on a minute. I see where this is going. I need to shut you up right now, because if I don't shut you up, then some ignorant, gullible, naive sap might subscribe to this garbage you are peddling, and then you and me are going to be getting death threats because they or someone they know subscribe to this garbage you're peddling, and then they're getting thrown in the slammer for it. He then said, first of all, you can't invoke God in court of law, saying rights come from the creator and all. Forget about that. That's not an issue that I would even think about going, and nobody else needs to go there. It's not a religious issue when you're in the courts. And second of all, he made it very clear that in his mind's eye, the best way, and he stressed this, is to win in court, is to use their own laws to beat them black and blue at every turn, because these tyrants in government, they are so corrupt and evil, they think they can do whatever they want, but that actually is what sets them up for their demise, because in thinking that they can do whatever they want, they actually have to make very strict laws to keep themselves in line, which makes it possible for people like you and me to use their own laws to beat them black and blue, because for every wrong that they commit, there is always, 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 always a check and balance in these statutes, codes, and ordinances, which are not laws, but are what someone in government considers to be public policy. So are the case
Right.
law. And Randy Kelton made it very clear that that is the best way to win at trial. He asserted you got to play the politics, and he even mentioned Winston Shrout. Said, "You ever heard about Winston Shrout?" And I told him, "Funny you mentioned him, because I was about to, before you interrupted me, bring him up." And Randy Kelton did mention that he was invited to speak to Winston Shrout on Winston's show way back in the day. Winston said everything he knew, and Randy Kelton's response was, well, excuse me, I'm a creature of statute. I don't see how this is going to help me. How am I supposed to use the stuff you're saying to win in court? And for all intents and purposes, he got Winston Shrout to admit that he was making the law up. And when I actually funny how I called Randy Kelton in not too distant past on the show to ask him about that, like a day or two after I brought that up, I found out that Winston Shrout had gotten arrested in Arizona. Talk about synchronicity playing out the way it did. But the funny thing is, this raises the issue of how so many people in the sovereign citizen community make the crazy assertion that if you use their own laws to try to win, they've already won, because you don't want to use their own laws to win. Well, that's flat out ridiculous. Where are you making the assertion that using their own laws means they've already won? I don't know where they're getting that idea. It's kind of silly. I mean, fighting fire with fire is something that anybody can have success doing. It may not, if you don't like being angry, I can understand that it may not feel comfortable to you, but in the end, that's the kind of the way you got to go about beating these people. So I needed to get this out to explain to you how what some people assert is the best way of fighting in court. And also Eddie Craig, Randy Kelton's co-host on Rule of Law Radio, he is also very, very serious about using their own laws to beat them black and blue, and he's very big on the transportation scam, objecting to transportation, driving, and all those words that have commercial definitions to win in court. So what do you have to say about this?
Well, I think that's true. I mean, I will say this though. I don't understand why they would say that you can't invoke God. It depends on how you do it, because there are documents that they have written themselves that have to do with God, and which is interesting, the language that they use. And they'll say things like, I pray that, and the powers that be, all different kinds of things they do. But they do actually, in some of their legal documents, they actually have the wording that talks about God, the Christian God. So I find that very interesting. Although I will say this, I don't think that someone can win in court if they're going to be emotional. I absolutely don't think so. And since I work with a paralegal a lot, he says if you even have to go to court, which you really shouldn't have to go to court if you're a secured party creditor, you should be able to work all of this stuff out in letters and writing, which is another thing you don't hear about. All you hear about is sovereign citizen loses whatever. The person who is a secured party creditor or sovereign should have their case dismissed, which means that in you actually win, but it's case dismissed like it never happened at all. So you're not going to hear that from the naysayers because they don't want to talk about case dismissed. But that's what it is. It's case dismissed. So the paralegal, he said that the best way to combat any of that stuff is for every one case that they cite, you need to have 3. If you can find 3 to back you up, you need to cite 3 cases to back you up in whatever your argument is going to be. So for everyone, you should have 3. And so I do agree that you can use the laws against them because they're the ones who put them there in the first place. That's exactly what Donald Trump does every single day, is he says, well, you guys made the law, not me. So we're just going to use the law, like the Patriot Act. We're just going to use that Patriot Act to do what you should have done, which is spy on people who are bad people, which is you, and not people who are regular people who aren't doing anything wrong. You know? So yeah, you can use I think it's great to use the laws against them. You know? It's just like right now with this mask mandate thing. There's nothing that says that a mandate is a law, and there's nothing that says that you obey a mandate. It's a guideline or suggestion. It's not a law. So if it's guideline or suggestion, that doesn't mean you have to do it, even if they put an executive order there. And now, see, what's happening is people are getting scared because they're afraid they're going to go to jail or get this big fine. Well, if you're a secured party creditor and you get a fine, all they're doing is they're asking you to push some digits their way. Okay, fine. Stamp it accepted for value and send it right back to the court. Don't let them go get it out of your Social Security number because that's what they want to do. But they're trying to make examples of people, which I think is really bad. I think you need to send, if you're a secured party creditor, so you can send them cease and desist letters and say, no, I'm not going to do that. And here's the reasons why. I'm not going to jeopardize my health. And you can list all of those reasons. I think you should always have a reason. And I think you should always say it if you have to, which I think is much better than just leaving them on their own and saying, no, I don't have to, because some of them don't get it. But when you make a reasonable argument, like it's bad for your health, OSHA says that all the masks don't work. And now we find out that the numbers are fudged in Texas, in Florida, where they say the numbers are bad. We're finding out that 85% of the tests that they give on this COVID thing come out negative, even though Florida has a ridiculous list of 100% on every lab. So you have plenty of evidence out there if you want to write a letter to your governor, you want to write a letter to your police chief, your mayor, your city council, all those people. You have plenty of evidence there. If you've already sent them cease and desist, like I have, you can just reinforce your stuff with an executor letter and a PSQ1, which is Public Service Questionnaire, which you should have already put in. And they have to fill that out before they can even question you at all. And with various things in place, they know that if you haven't committed bodily harm or property damage, there's really nothing they can do to you. So you can refuse them out.
All right. Well, when it comes to understanding how people are getting locked up and thrown in jail when they do no harm, it's people that are, regardless of whether or not you call yourself a sovereign citizen, the common sense aspect of it is that no free entity, free meaning not under contract, has any authority over another free entity, which means that every single human being from the moment they are born has the right to do anything that they want, with the only caveat being that your actions cannot cause harm or intend to cause harm to another person or property through negligence or deliberate intent. And The
That's
way
right.
that the courts get around this has been that they are what they are doing, and this is what Eddie Craig of Rural Law Radio. I'm a big fan of him. He has actually said that he does not believe in the whole thing about birth certificates, strawmans, and all that. He says that's just a Patriot myth. He says it does not turn you into a corporation. It does not create a straw man. It does not create a legal fiction. What they are doing is alleging that you committed an infraction while operating in a commercial capacity over which there exists government regulatory authority by virtue of the fact that wherever there is commerce, there is a contract. And that you can, he says, I can prove that through the statutes and the codes, the way they are written in the legalese language. And he's always asserted that the best way to fight the charge, he does it often with traffic tickets, but it can be done with almost any victimless crime, which isn't a crime, is to object to the commercial nexus by saying objection to the term, whatever the term is. It assumes facts not in evidence not previously agreed to and requires a legal conclusion by the fact witness. But then again, you get all these people in the sovereign citizen community who don't want to do it that way. They try to use another tool in the toolbox, like Dean Clifford, for example. He actually said, well, he made it clear he does not think that arguing I was never engaged in transportation in the first place is the best way to fight a traffic ticket. And he even actually said, I heard him say this once, that showing a driver's license to a cop who pulls you over does not imply or suggest that you are in commerce, because showing a license to an officer is no different than an officer showing his badge to his friends at the neighborhood bar to show that he works as a cop on his day job. Yeah, if you believe that, I got some really nice seafront property off the coast of Mongolia that I'll sell you for $2. And Dean Clifford's notion is totally incorrect in so many regards. And I called into Eddie Craig's Rail of Law radio show and brought that to his attention, and Eddie did explain to me how Dean is flat out mistaken. And he said, don't create a conflict out of this, Andrew, to make it seem like Dean and I are warring, but I can assure you that he's flat out incorrect on that. And my method of fighting by not engaging in transportation in the first place is the best way to go. And all this birth certificate straw man argument and disavowing your straw man and all that and whatever, and the capital letters and the names and all these Patriot myths that Eddie Craig refers them to is not the way to go. Well, I
That
needed to
depends
get
on
that
what
out.
you're doing.
What do you have to say about it?
Well, I think that depends on what you're doing. For example, I did go to law school for a little bit, and I decided I did not want to go and take the bar, because then I would be making an oath to something that is not the Constitution. So I didn't want to go that route. So in legal terminology, okay, so when you get a paper from the court, some things are capital and some things are not. Well, if you know about legal papers and what that means, what it means is that when something is capitalized, there is a definite definition to that word. Okay, so you can go along and you're making your legal argument in your paper, and then you want to make sure that the legal terminology that you're using for this one thing. So if I'm going to use the word person, let's say, in the legal dictionary, that means that it could be a company, it could be a human, it could be an entity of some sort, it can be whatever. All right. Well, if I want a definition actually attached to that word for every time I use that in the document, I have to define that term, and I will put it in capital letters to make sure that that definition sticks every time I use it in that legal paper. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, and I have acknowledged to Eddie Craig that I agree to disagree with him on his claim that the whole thing about there is no birth certificate straw man and there is no capital letters making you a corporation. He claims that's a Patriot myth, but well, he's right in saying that knowing that isn't going to help you any more or less than not knowing it is, because he makes the claim, just know that you have to object to the commercial nexus to win. That's the key to winning. So knowing the stuff I just mentioned is not going to help you, but that does not mean that at some spiritual level, if you will, that by doing what they did with the capital letters and the and the birth certificate, they are affecting you, bonding you, ball and chaining you, if you will, at a spiritual level, and it certainly would help to try to sever that. However, one problem with that is that a lot of people who try to go through the official way of becoming an officially recognized sovereign citizen by terminating their citizenship, they discover that they ended up worse off than before, because once you terminate your citizenship, it's no longer possible to do anything in the real world. A convicted felon would actually have more opportunities in life if he was a convicted felon who is not a officially recognized sovereign citizen than a perfectly clean criminal record guy who did make himself an officially recognized sovereign citizen by severing his social security number, birth certificate, and everything else with the government. You can't get a job. You can't travel to foreign countries. Nobody will do business with you. Even if the courts decide, okay, we can't prove who you are through citizenship, so we're going to let you go and not press charges against you, that doesn't mean that you're still not going to have to go through the hassle of spending time in jail. You may be able to beat the rap, but you won't be able to beat the ride, as the saying goes. So
Okay,
trying to
so
become a sovereign citizen
the
is not.
problem is you're not thinking, they're not thinking about it correctly. And well, I don't know if you're thinking about it correctly. I think you might be just talking about the way other people think, because you're not, the straw man is not ever going to die. Okay. You can sever yourself from the straw man, but what you're doing is, because it will never die and it's always going to affect you, the best you can possibly hope for is to just take it over. So when you say that you are, like, you put in your paper and say that you're no longer a citizen of the United States, okay, all you're doing is saying, I'm separating the live human in the corporation. I understand that the straw man is still there, but I am putting my live person on the land. And as a live person on the land, I understand that the straw man is still a citizen, but now I'm going to take that over. So I can make the straw man do stuff. The straw man can't get out of the corporation because it's a corporate thing. The commerce can't happen. You have to have the corporation to be able to function in commerce anyway. So they're thinking of it completely wrong, like they're killing it or something. I don't know. It's completely ridiculous. I think it would be more beneficial to them, and I do know felons who, people who have had felonies and things like that, who have they understand, okay, so the straw man is the deal that is in commerce. So if I'm going to deal in commerce, I'm actually making the straw man do something. For example, if there's a place called Walmart, a thing called Walmart. Walmart can't function without an actual person making it do something. So there's a separation between the live human that's making it do something and the actual thing that's it's actually a fictitious thing called Walmart. Okay? So the best that this Walmart thing can do and this live human can do is make that Walmart thing function. So in it, what you're doing with the corporation is you're just saying, okay, so because I want to be the creditor and not the debtor, I'm going to now be the manager of the company and not just the employee of the company. You see what I mean? All you're doing is turning the tables the opposite way. Does that make more sense to you?
Yes, and it's interesting how these people. I don't know how spiritual you are, but it's funny how a lot of the people that who have these methods of being able to use the system's own laws to win at trial in courtroom, they tend to be very left-brained and closed-minded. It surprises me so much, like Eddie Craig and Dave Champion. Dave Champion is the guy who wrote the book Income Tax Shattering the Myths, which is very pertinent now, considering that today, July 15th, is the belated tax day that everybody is funny how I'm interviewing you on that day, and we're talking about this stuff, but that is the case. And of course, all the income tax money doesn't go to government; it goes to pay the interest. 100% of it goes to pay the interest on the national debt. And Dave Champion, in his book Income Tax: Shattering the Myth, shatters all that, and he goes through all the terminology and everything to expose it. But it's funny how these people who come up with the best ways of showing how the law is like designed to scam you, they themselves don't want to be spiritual and open-minded and to really do what you need to do to, I mean, what they're doing by beating the system using their own laws and such, they're just putting the system in perpetual check, I argue. But if you want to checkmate the system, you need to expand your consciousness and be able to overpower the system of domination and control at a consciousness level. And that's where these people seem to be a little flawed. I don't really know if we should make this a spiritual interview, but out of curiosity, when it comes to using metaphysics and consciousness, because Winston Shroud tried to do that often, and it didn't seem to work out too well in the end for him at the moment. And so, what do you have to say about using metaphysics and spirituality in regards to trying to get your work out there?
Well, first of all, I am a Christian, and I do think that God is opening people's eyes to the fact that they've been deceived, and I think that the corporation is on the side of evil and deception. But I don't believe in using astrology, card reading, horoscope, anything like that, because that is the same thing, which is on the side of the evil, and I'm not going to do that. I do think that God has given us God-given rights, and I think our Constitution reflects those things. And because we have those God-given rights, if you're standing on the side of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution as an American patriot, God's going to uphold that. If you step your toe, like, see, because you're telling me that Winston Shrout was always invoking this stuff, okay, then you're going to fall, because that's not the way it's supposed to be. You can't straddle the fence. You're either going to be in good or you're going to be in evil. There's not going to be any other way to go. So in one sense, I would say I do think it's spiritual, because God put the Bill of Rights there. He knows that there's a definite slavery issue going on here as far as the debtor and them making us a debtor and secret societies and all that kind of stuff. That's evil. That's just, it should be obvious if people are going down this road. But if you try to work with them and render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, what does Caesar want? Caesar wants the taxes. Caesar wants you to fill out certain papers, right? Caesar wants you to live in harmony together so that they can function until the time when Christ returns and delivers us from all this crap, So if you're supposed to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, why can't you just give them the tax paper that they want? Why can't you just use the laws that they have put there in place for you to use peaceably without having to go to court, with writing them the letter that they want so they can close their little loop, so they can go over to get their smoke and mirrors little digits out of your Social Security number and benefit as well. I think God will bless you if you're not greedy, if you understand the position, make yourself a secured party creditor, but also forgive them their debt, which is what you would do if you're filing the taxes. If you are filing the taxes as the secured party creditor, you are getting your abandoned property that has been left all over the place, and you're forgiving all those debtors that are out there, which is exactly what you're supposed to do according to the Bible. So you're rendering under Caesar what is Caesar's. You're forgiving those who have deceitfully and horribly used you, and you are closing the loop and doing all the things that you're supposed to be in honor of God. That's where I'm at. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I will admit, I am not a Christian. I did try going through Christianity, try the church for a little bit. It didn't work out in the end. I am of the spiritual but not religious type of the metaphysical nature. And unfortunately, that kind of did cost me the chance to interact with folks in the Patriot community. I consider myself a prominent member of the Patriot community. I've gone to Washington D.C. a few times for rallies and such with all those American flags and all, and founding fathers motifs and all that. And but I even went to the Tea Party conference, and I mean, the Tea Party and all, they're all about freedom and liberty and all that, but their one little blip is that they are narrow-minded conservative, and conservative in this sense means narrow-minded. And they actually checked my social media, and they saw that I'm willing to talk about all kinds of crazy things like ETs and UFOs and astrology and metaphysics and all. So they decided, okay, you're a bad fit, and they handed me $200 in cash and said, here's a refund, now beat it. That hit me like a ton of bricks, and I realized at that point that how hard it is, that because so many people in the Patriot community seem to be like bonded by Christianity for whatever the reason, it's not going to be easy for me to be able to try to get them to think, okay, Christianity and all religions for that matter really aren't the way to go, because you're infinite consciousness. You shouldn't be worshiping a higher deity when you yourself are everything that is, was, and ever will be. But then again, that's you have the right to freedom of religion. Don't get me wrong. It's bless the founding fathers for putting that in the First Amendment. But and in the end, I see I have my reasons to believe it would be a little bit of a flaw, and it has unfortunately cost me a little bit in regards to trying to fight for my end of the stick the way I do.
Well, would you like to hear what my thought is on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, first of all, if you're an actual Christian, then for someone to, I guess, be mean to you or ostracize you because you are not a Christian is absolutely against Christianity anyway. So that's just ridiculous if you're being treated in that fashion. And I think you're talking more about self-righteousness than actual Christianity. And I do believe that people in the Christian community become self-righteous and they think they're better sometimes than other people. But that's not Christianity. And there's a lot of hypocrites in Christianity. And if the Christians would have stood up and done what they were supposed to according to Christianity, they wouldn't be in this mess right now. So you cannot judge Christianity by the people sitting in the pews. Just letting you know.
Absolutely, and don't even get me started on all the sick and twisted things that the Vatican has done to.
Oh,
yeah, that's a whole new can of worms. But April LaJune, I hate to do this to you, but I ask hard questions on my show, and there are a few hard things that are here. There is one YouTube user in particular that, well, on one hand, I seem to support the idea that she shows that a lot of things in the sovereign citizen community can get people in trouble, and she raises awareness about that. But at the same time, she obviously wants to maintain the status quo of police state and society over the individual. I am talking, of course, about Virgo Triad. I'm sure you've heard that YouTube channel in your before, and there is actually a video here made a year ago titled April LaJune's daughter sets the record straight. Okay, I'm sorry to bring this up, but I want to give you the chance to set the record straight. Do you have anything to say about this video and what was said in it?
Well, I didn't actually watch the video, so I don't know what was actually said in it. I've only heard what's been said in it. But what I will say about this, and I really don't want to throw my daughter under the bus because she has her own problems, but, you know, when somebody is extremely angry at a family member, just like Mary Trump or whatever is bringing out this ridiculous book on Donald Trump, they're going to say all kinds of stuff. And there's nothing that you can do about that. And I think defending yourself against things that are, well, not right, it's just, what's the point? You can't prove negative. So there's nothing I can say about it. There's nothing I can do about when she wants to put out stuff like that. You know, I could go into all of her problems and things like that, but I don't think it's fair to do that to my daughter. I just don't think it's fair.
Fair enough. So let's change the subject to another issue that I'm sure people have brought to your attention. There is a newspaper called the Durango Herald that I
Oh yeah,
uncovered.
I love that.
Yeah, you
I
write
love.
that. What do you have to say about that article? Business owner accused of defrauding customers talking about you. That was written on May 16th, 2018. Do you have any response to that?
Yeah, I thought it was extremely interesting because when the reporter came over, I literally showed him that I put in my I deleted my account. Remember, I just told you that I put in my social security number and that all that stuff into Amazon and Google. Remember, I just told you that.
Yeah.
Okay. While the reporter was sitting right there, I deleted that out of there and I put it back in, and he saw for his own very own eyes that happened. I also showed him all the things that I had. Okay. So he didn't put any of those things in there. He didn't put anything in there like that. And I thought, okay, so I just showed you all of this stuff and you have nothing to say about that? I mean, to me, I thought he did a nice neutral article, really. He did a neutral article. But if you're going to give people information, don't you think you might have went and said that? I think it would have been better for him to say, I watched her, put in her social security number. She took the thing from the back, whatever. But I think what actually happened is he put out that article and, oh boy, the FBI made them take that off their social media like right away. I mean, they were on it. They're like, you need to bury that story like yesterday. And you couldn't even get a hold of that reporter for a while. I don't even know if you can get a hold of him now. So the FBI knew that it was right, and they told them, you got to bury that story.
Well, thanks for giving your take on that. And now I'd like to talk a little bit more about the whole accepted for value thing. There was a video that another YouTube user who's like Virgo Triad, the male equivalent of Virgo Triad. Virgo Triad is a female.
Yeah.
This guy Doaziak is, I think, something like the YouTube channel. He uploads a lot of stuff to try to berate the sovereign citizen Freeman on Land community and maintain the status quo regarding the police state. And he did a video called "Why Is Dean Clifford Still in Jail?" back in the day when Dean Clifford had been taken into custody for whatever he was taken into custody for. Still a mystery regarding that, why he was in jail for 16 months. It really wasn't made very clear. I guess they just wanted to shut him up. But anyhow, the thing in that video, it said that Dean Clifford, he gets a lot of his information. Dean acknowledged that he listens to Winston Shrout seminars, and Winston Shrout, in turn, said that he got a lot of his information from a man who hates publicity, so he wouldn't give him the name. But the YouTube user Doaziak said that that man was Roger Elvick, who spent a lot of time in jail for what he had to say about accepted for value. And now the interesting thing is the FBI and Department of Justice and all, they actually, I believe, do have websites and all where they actually say, don't even think about trying to use this all accepted for value sovereign citizen garbage on us. It is going to come back to haunt you. Interesting how they say that, but they don't say anything about like Eddie Craig and Randy Kelton's method of using their own laws to beat them black and blue at every turn. Maybe because that is perhaps the best method, I don't know. But it's funny how the way it worked out, it does. And when it comes to value, we can always debate. Value is it's in the eye of the beholder. Food can be more valuable than gold if you want to look at it that way. But and in the end, gold and silver are worth only what we as a society decide is worth, same as money. So how do we make sense of the whole accepted for value thing? Could you please enlighten us on that? For anybody that doesn't know about that, please take us into great detail about that, because I really want to get into this for those that are confused about what that is and don't understand it. And then maybe after that we'll have maybe a discussion. You can give your take on whether or not it's a good route, because I've got a lot of people in my circle of friends who say it's a patron myth, it's a bad route. You're only going to ask for trouble if you try using accepted for value like Roger Elvick did to win.
Well, I think what happens most of the time is people don't put the paperwork in order. They don't put the groundwork in order, and they just get all excited about paying off their bills instead of laying a groundwork and letting the corporation know that you're the secured party creditor. There's a lot of people who don't even want it. They don't want it put in a UCC1, which you have to put in these papers. You have to do what the corporation wants you to do. They don't want to do it. They just want to put in an accepted for value and call it a day. That's, back in the day when people first found this out, that would work, okay? Because you didn't have to jump through the hoops that you have to jump now. But they changed the rules almost every year. So you got to keep up on how they want it done, what you're supposed to do. Most of the time, I'll just tell you right now, most of the time, every time I've studied somebody's stuff, they're leaving out some critical element, and that's why it doesn't work. And I think, and I'm just going to say it, a lot of these people are out there. I think that they're hooked up with the government. I think they've made deals with the government that if you leave me alone, I will put out this misinformation, make sure that all these people fail, so they will go out there and then will tell other people it doesn't work. I think it's an actual campaign. That's what I think. And because it's not that hard to do accepted for value. You just stamp it a certain way. You put a postage stamp on it. You change it into a money order, and that's it. But they're really far behind in the Treasury, IRS getting it done. So that's going to take you a long time. But if you haven't laid any groundwork, you haven't told them, this is my position. Here's my I'm live. You got to tell them you're alive. There's all these things you have to do first. And you try to put in acceptance for value and get them to pay your bill because you're really jumping the gun. They're going to call it a frivolous filing. And frankly, I don't blame them because you didn't do what they asked you to do, which was correct your status, write certain letters, and tell them the way it's supposed to be. It's really not that hard. Is that what you're asking me?
Yes, and that leads into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is the whole ideal of filing commercial liens against people. I mean, if everybody had the right to file a lien against everybody, society would fall apart just as much as it would if everybody had the right to sue everybody for anything. So there has to be a certain criteria regarding whether or not you can legitimately file a lien against someone, and the whole paper terrorism route has gotten a lot of criticism for the fact that, well, they say they're filing fraudulent liens. The sovereign citizens would say, no, we're not filing fraudulent liens. We have legitimate liens because the people we're filing liens against did something wrong, so we obviously have grounds against filing the lien. Well, the problem with the liens is there's no judgment backing them. And when I spoke to Randy Kelton about this, Rural of Radio Coast, Randy Kelton, he made it clear that he has always wanted to go against the system by pressing charges against them, sue them, press charges against them, hammer them hard with their own laws, because those have judgments backing them. But a lien does not have a judgment backing them, so you are not protected, and they can come after you claiming that it's fraudulent. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I think that's stupid. And here's why. First of all, people are filing frivolous liens. I do agree with that because somebody gets really pissed off about something and I'm going to put a lien on you. And they really don't have any damages. Okay? That's just ridiculous. That's the first thing. If you literally have damages, you can file a lien on something. Now, if you couldn't file a lien without a judgment, then you couldn't put a lien on a car. You can't put lien on property. You can't do a mechanic's lien. You couldn't do all these things just by filing it. So that's already a stupid statement to begin with, that you have to have a judgment in order to file a lien. The only thing that you have to file a lien as a secured party creditor with the UCC is you have to literally lay out your damages. You have to lay it out. You can't just say because they looked at me wrong, which is a lot of the time. They looked at me wrong. I didn't like the fact that they were always talking about me behind my back. That's not damages. You have to have actual showing of damages, like you've lost money for something. They damaged your property in some way. Hurt feelings is not damaged property. You know what I mean? And a lot of people do file stuff over hurt feelings, for example. And they don't follow, the other thing they don't do is they don't follow the federal rules of civil procedure. You've got to follow the federal rules of civil procedure on how to present whatever it is you're doing. And the very last thing you should do is put a lien on something. Not the first thing, because you don't have anything to back you up when you do it. Does that make sense?
Yes. And regarding, I was about to lost my train of thought all of a sudden regarding. Oh yes, regarding what the laws are and how to. I might as well ask an agree to disagree kind of question on this. Switching gears for a moment. When I had Eddie Craig on my show, he said that the three things in America that are laws: the federal constitution, the 50 state constitutions, and the bills that are properly signed into law by the governors, provided those bills are followed all the outlining in the state constitutions. Well, I asked Winston Shrout the same question. Do you agree or disagree with that? It's funny how Winston actually gave two schools of thought when I interviewed him. He said that in his opinion, there's only two laws: love thy neighbor and do no harm. But earlier in the interview, he said that law always comes down to the remedy to the contract violation. Wherever there's a law, there's a contract, and if there is no remedy, then there is no way to lay down the law. So it all comes down to the remedy. So funny how he seemed to contradict himself in a sense, but I kind of know where he's going. But he did say that he does not think it makes sense to say that in America the federal and state constitutions and the bills signed into law by the governors, provided they follow the proper channels in the state constitutions, are the only three things that are laws. And in other countries you would find the equivalence of that, and there are ways to determine what the equivalents of that are. I did ask Eddie Craig about that when I called into the show a couple times, but in regards to that, do you have any comments on what law is and what law is not?
Well, law is for the corporation. And when he's talking about a contract, that means you're still in the corporation. If you have sent in, which you should have, if you're doing it right, you've rescinded all your signatures on any contracts and made them already null and void. And that's part of the paperwork that you have. Because the problem is they put these contracts in place that you don't know anything about. You don't know what the contract says, which makes it a null and void contract anyway. Because in a contract, both people have to know exactly what's in it, and they have to agree with it, and they have to sign it. Okay, that's a valid contract. Well, that's not the way the government recognizes it, because most things are one-sided. They're not two-sided. So that makes it an even worse contract. So in the realm of taking your freedom, you can file paperwork to rescind your signatures, and then you can redo the contracts that you want to do. And that's how the corporation works, by contract. Contracts usurp the Constitution. That's why in a court of law, the Constitution doesn't actually apply. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm trying to do it as easy as I possibly can. So if you are still in the corporate capacity, which is basically what you're telling me is Eddie Craig and all these guys are still in the corporate capacity because they haven't filed anything to sever themselves from that corporate capacity. They're still in commerce. They're still dealing with the contracts that are there, which is why they have to go to court, because the jurisdiction is still there. Okay? If you have filed and you have become a secured party creditor, that jurisdiction is no longer in place, and those contracts are no longer in place. So in regards, when you're doing this, you've sent cease and desist letters. You've sent out executor letters, executrix letters, whatever you are, and you've sent out a public service questionnaire to let them know that these are the things that have to happen before I can actually talk to you. Because now you got to remember, you're the manager now. You're the person who's the authorized representative now of that commercial entity. So now, acting in the best behalf of that corporate thing, okay, now you're going to determine what contracts you want to do and what contracts you don't want to do. So, for example, if they're giving you a traffic ticket, you say, well, I'm sorry, I don't want to contract with you, and I'm not going to do that. Here's your contract back. Thank you very much. If you've already sent them cease and desist letters, by the time they run you, they already know that, and they're not going to do anything to you. They're not going to waste their paper. That's the difference. They're not going to waste their paper. If you get stopped by a cop, they're just going to run your plate and go, oh, there's no point in even stopping those people. I know a guy who's been running around on his expired plate for a long, long time. The reason he's got the expired plate on there is because he knows that expired plate, if the cop decides to run it while he's driving, the cop will pull up all of his records and he'll go, there's no point in pulling that guy over. It's just going to lead to a dismissal. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that thing about driving with some sovereign citizen plates or expired plates and all, I mean, some people take it to an extreme. Eddie Craig, he actually has no tags whatsoever on his cars, and he's gotten lucky. I asked him when I interviewed him, why am I correct in assuming you get pulled over a zillion times a week because your car has no plate or stickers on it? And he actually said, oh, no, I've actually been able to luck out. They don't seem to notice for the most part. And well, he's got, I guess maybe the angels are on his side in that regard. In reality, a lot of people would be scared to death to do something like that because they would.
But that's not what I did. That is not what I did. What I did is I filed all my paperwork, just like I told you, did the cease and desist orders, did the executor letter, and the PSQ one and all that kind of stuff. I did all of my paperwork, and then I sent in a picture of my ID that I have, a picture of my license plate, and a letter that said, this is for records so that you and I can, have our records straight. This is for your reference only. And the reason that I did that is because they actually were pulling me over and I was getting things dismissed. And I thought, you know what? And the last cop says to me, he goes, you really need to make sure that everybody knows. So I sent in these letters to the police department, the sheriff's department, the internal affairs, the attorney general of the state, and let them know, here's my position and all that kind of stuff, and all of his stuff. So I don't think running around without a plate on is as good as running around with something that they can run. I mean, wouldn't it be easier for them to do their job if you just put the thing on there and they run it and they go, oh, okay, I get it, cease and desist, no problem. You're not doing anything wrong. You're not causing bodily harm. You're not causing property damage. I'll go get someone else in commerce that I can actually get some money from. Because that's all it is. It's about money.
Right, but on the other hand, when I've addressed that with Eddie Craig and asked him, well, your method is basically fighting fire with fire and basically saying I'm not afraid of you no matter what, and I'm willing to go down till the bitter end. He's made it clear, though, the purpose of my traffic stop script, and he's made a very well articulated script, what to say to an officer if they pull you over. And he made it clear that even if the police bash out your car window and take you to jail, don't worry about it. If you get everything on film and upload it to a system so that if they dash your camera out, you still have it recorded and saved, you can sue them for a fortune. Of course, a lot of people in the spiritual community would say that you shouldn't sue because suing is justice, and justice is glorified revenge and all that. But I think that's kind of silly because if people are taking advantage of you, you gotta fight back and draw a hard line. And but in regards to that issue, but then again, there are those who would not want to go that route. They would prefer to just get the ticket, and then try to fight it another way without having to go through the hassle of resisting in such a fearless manner, because they don't have the cojones to stand up to the cop to that. I actually tried to stand up to a cop like that in Arizona using Eddie Craig's script, and in the end, it didn't really work out too well, but I still feel very good of myself, and it made me stronger, and I made it really hard for them when they decided to not respect my rights, and I have no regrets. Well, that's me, but
Yeah, but that's okay. I mean, I prefer to do everything as peaceable as possible without a fight if I can possibly do it. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to go out there and hold a sign out on the street that says masks are dumb or Democrats are demons or whatever, But I'm going to try to be as peaceable as I possibly can. And I think the reason that people in the position of being sovereign or American nationalist or whatever have a bad rap is because it's always combative, which I think is absolutely against what the whole thing is about anyway, which is living in peace, living in harmony, trying to make sure that you don't do any harm to anyone, that you're living a clean life. Now, that's not to say that somebody's not going to try to usurp your rights, okay? Because I have dealt with ridiculously stupid bully cops before, okay? I have. And I used to wear a camera on me constantly because of it. And I have cameras in my car, and I have all kinds of things to keep myself safe. But I think the cops know that now, so they don't bother me. But my point is sometimes you will have to push back, but you have to determine. I even had a cop say to me, I couldn't even believe the guy said this to me. He says to me, if you don't roll your window down more, because I did the same thing Eddie Craig said, just a couple of inches, whatever. If you don't roll your window down, I'm going to break that window, and I'm going to yank you out of there. And I said, so let me get this straight. You're threatening to damage my property, my private property, and to bodily harm, your bodily harm, threaten me. Is that what you're doing? And he said, no, ma'am, that's not what I'm doing. I said, that's exactly what you said. You said that you were going to break my window, which is damaging my property because you want me to roll my window down more. And I said, I'm not going to because I can hear you. You can hear me. We can have a conversation just like this. There's no problem with communication. But you're threatening my property, and you're threatening me with bodily harm. Well, that backed him up a whole lot right there. So I think sometimes it's in the wording of what you say and who you're dealing with. Now, I know I've read Eddie Craig's script, and I thought, well, in the perfect scenario, that probably would work. But sometimes there's going to be variations. There's always going to be a variation. And you got to be able to think fast on your feet. I've had cops stop by my property when I'm outside and trying to get me on because I have surveillance cameras on my property, trying to get me on saying that I have illegal surveillance or something and bringing up some statutes that don't even relate. And I'm like, dude, man, you got to have to go get a different statute because that's not it. And go back to what I'm doing, So I've had that. But I do think that you've got to be serious and you've got to be willing to go to jail if that's the case. But I don't think that you should push to the point where you're going to get hurt. You should just do what Harry Baldwin, I think, is really good when it comes to this kind of thing. Just say, okay, I do not consent to this, and I just want you to know I'm a live human being, and I can be harmed. And that's all he does. And he'll put his arms behind his back, and then they usually just go away. But I think being combative is really the wrong way to go. That's just my opinion.
yes, I'm sure you heard about that officer, his name was Greg Anderson, who made that video telling all of his fellow officers, start acting like you understand common law and the Constitution. Don't act like you don't. If the people who you're confronting don't want to cooperate with you and don't want to provide anything, then leave them alone. If you don't have probable cause, don't hassle them. And his video got like 400,000 views, and his superiors said, "We've got word from higher up that your video is a little too problematic. It's time to take it down. If you don't take it down, we're firing you." And he refused to take it down. They fired him, and he created a GoFundMe page, and lo and behold, he ended up getting like $450,000 in donations from people who felt sorry for him, that he got fired by corrupt cops who don't know how to do their job the proper way. I decided to have a little fun with this. I did actually send him, and they never responded to me. Him and the people that created that GoFundMe page, I told them, "Hey, Eddie Craig of Law Radio, he's actually got this lawsuit in Texas he wants to file, public's right to liberty and all. He needs like 25,000 for that. You just made 450,000 in a heartbeat because he got fired. It's not like you're going to know anything to do with that money. It wouldn't be too much trouble if you really want to throw a monkey wrench in the system and get some justice for what was done to you. Could you like maybe donate some of that money to Eddie Craig's lawsuit?" Well, apparently that hadn't happened yet. I don't know if they didn't see the message, but it's a very interesting fact that a few days after I did that, I actually ended up getting 302'd by the police when I was walking down the street on my nature walk, and entities of some sort were toying with my mind and making me think and do crazy things. And I could make of that whatever you will, but I ended up spending 5 days in a psych ward because the police 302'd me because the neighbors thought I was a little too crazy when they saw me having my mind toyed with. And, well, I've come out of it a stronger person and all that, but it just goes to show you that those who try to throw a monkey wrench into the system are going to get hassled in so many different kinds of ways. And, well, if you want to spill the beans on any other forms that you've gotten hassled with, so people know what they may be up against, and I want to make it clear, I'm not doing this so people chicken out. I want you to say this so you encourage people to be stronger and fight the system more, and fight in a peaceful manner by all means. Don't get violent if you don't have to. But if you have any stories to tell, April LaJune, by all means, go ahead and tell them now.
Well, after I have filed all my paperwork and done all of my notifications and things like that, I have had the sheriff's department, because I conceal carry. I've had the sheriff's department, when they were talking to other people, and I just happened to be there, asked me, "Do you have a permit for that concealed carry?" And I said, "I'm not answering that question." And they said, "Can you show it to me?" And I said, I'm not doing it." So one of the cops, I handed him my ID, and when I say my ID, I'm talking about my ID that has my UCC1 on it. It has my picture, my regular stats and whatever, and it has my UCC1 on it. Cops calling it in just the way it's written, with the dashes and the semi and the colon and everything. He's saying, "I don't know if I'm supposed to tell you this." And anyway, it comes back, "Yep, she's clean." And so the cop didn't push me on my my concealed carry. I thought that was very interesting because, usually they have a big cow if you conceal carry, which they shouldn't be, because that's against your Second Amendment, So that's one thing. I've known people who have been hassled by cops about their guns, especially in New York. Wow. And after a series of paperwork events, got the charges dropped because they figured out this guy, he's invoking his constitutional rights, and he has a Second Amendment right to carry his gun regardless. There's no restrictions on him. Felons who have done that because they filed their paperwork, because there is nothing in the Constitution that says that a felon can't carry a weapon. And darn good and well they are. Anyway, the drug dealer on the corner is carrying. When I used to live in Antonito, Colorado, all the drug dealers were carrying, and they all had felonies. So, you think I'm not going to carry a weapon? Of course I'm going to carry a weapon. So, I think it's really important to know you've got constitutional rights as a secured party creditor that you can actually use, because the Constitution actually applies. That means if they take your stuff, they have to compensate you for that. They can't come in there and take stuff. Well, I've had them threaten to take my stuff before, and then they backed off after they figured out who I was. I've had cops tell me I had to show them ID after they figured. I said, no, I'm not showing you ID. After they figured out what was going on, they say, have a nice day. I've had a cop say to me before, how does it feel to be untouchable? I said, well, not that great, because I have to keep on explaining it to you guys over and over again. But on the other hand, I like the fact that I'm not causing any problems, and now you guys are getting it. But, you will get pushback sometimes. I've never gotten a frivolous letter from the IRS. I've never gotten anything that says I'm doing anything wrong. I've never had any government agency write me any kind of letter that said I'm doing anything wrong. I've had Virgo Triad or stupid people over there who have no clue what's going on in the world whatsoever turn me into various organizations who haven't done anything to me because they already know I'm not doing anything wrong. And speaking of Virgo Triad, I do want to say something about her. What she does is she will give you parts of something. For example, she's got a thing up there. The FBI tells you that 1099 OID, you can't do that, blah, blah, blah. Well, the first question would be, if you can't do a 1099 OID, why do they have the form? She doesn't tell you that what has been happening is people are turning in a 1099 OID form, which is the original issued discount. They're turning in that form by itself. And that form has to go with your 1040 or your 1041. You can't just file a 1099 OID by itself, and that's what people are doing. That would be a frivolous filing, and that would be correct what she's saying. But she's not telling you the rest. That's how she does every single thing that she reports. She only gives you a teeny tiny portion without actually the whole entire thing. And that is manipulative and misleading. And that's what these people do.
Yes, indeed they do. And I remember what I wanted. Well, I said I lost my train of thought. Now I remember what it was. And you have mentioned the UCC. I did want to bring that up because I heard a couple schools of thought on this. Randy Kelton on one of his shows did say he thinks there is a conspiracy to keep people from looking at the UCC, and because it seems to have a lot of checks and balances that could be used to our liberty-loving advantage. However, Dave Champion, who wrote Income Tax Shattering the Myths, has said on several occasions that the UCC, Uniform Commercial Code, is actually not legally binding upon anybody. And let's kill two birds with one stone here. I think you just said a couple minutes ago that the Constitution is a binding law or something. Well, actually, no. If you read Lysander Spooner's book No Treason, you would know that the federal Constitution is actually an illegal document because the founding fathers passed it without the consent of the required number of people and then the states and all. And because of that, it's, well, technically not a legal document, but the tyrants in government, they know that. They're trying to maintain the illusion that the Constitution exists because, well, there are ways that they can use that to their advantage, making it seem like the Constitution exists and violating it without consequence, because the fact that it doesn't actually exist means that there is really no grounds, legal grounds, for you to file the lawsuit or charges against them for a constitutional violation for the reasons that does exist that Lysander Spooner exposed in No Treason. So that idea that the federal Constitution of the United States of America and the UCC are not actually legally binding upon anybody, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I do, because they are legally binding to the corporation. That's the thing. The Uniform Commercial Code is what all laws come from, and it is what governs the corporation itself. Okay, so every law, every statute, people say they're really statutes. They're statutes and they're ordinances. Those things all come from the UCC. So if the corporation recognizes the UCC as its governing thing, like their clerk and recorder, and they're saying, if you put this document into our commercial registry here, we will acknowledge that. Now, as a regular person, a sovereign person walking around on the street, that would be the case. That, yeah, the UCC doesn't have anything to do with you. But as the person who's the administrator of the commercial account, which is still in the corporation and always will be, and you can't sever that, then it's to your advantage to use the UCC because they recognize it. And as long as they recognize it, I'm going to use it to my advantage. To act as if it doesn't exist when it actually does, and they don't listen to it when they actually do, would just be stupid. I mean, it would literally be stupid. You're not taking the advantage that you actually have.
So it is worth it to consider it. Okay, that's your take on the issue. You still there? Because it sounded like you may have. Okay, because it sounded like you may have gotten out. But anyhow, great. Noticing that before I told you that this was an audio only interview, I did notice the background. You got some Trump stuff in your room, and I guess we might as well spend a little time talking about him and whether or not he is a good president or a fraud. There is a lot of enigmas regarding this issue, and it seems like you'll never hear the end of it regarding who you talk to. It was an interesting fact how Alex Jones would not allow David Icke to come on his show for like the longest time after the election that Trump beat Hillary, because David Icke asserts that Donald Trump is definitely an Illuminati insider, but Alex Jones asserts that Trump is not out to get us. He wants to be the next JFK and do what JFK did before he got his brains blown out, and he also wants to do what Andrew Jackson Old Hickory did regarding taking down the banksters, and Trump did recently merge the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, and can't help but wonder what that's going to be in store for. But one thing about Trump that I've mentioned this a lot of times on my show, and I think I might as well bring it to your attention again, the whole thing about whether or not Trump is in bed with Israel. David Icke's done a lot of research on this. He's done a lot of talking about it, saying that because of Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, being in bed, literally and figuratively and possibly literally in bed with Benjamin Netanyahu and all that, there are definitely ties with Israel. And it was brought to my attention at the Conscious Life Expo in early 2018 by Ted Marr that when Donald Trump met the Emperor Palpatine of planet Earth, Henry Kissinger, back in May of 2017, for all intents and purposes, that meeting was so Henry Kissinger could tell Donald Trump, "You will do what my minions and I tell you to do, or else you and your family will be dead." And if that's true, that raises the question, okay, is Donald Trump the I have a big ego, I don't take no for an answer, I don't back down to anybody, Donald Trump, is he actually going to cower in fear to Henry Kissinger and his Zionist minions with a death threat like that? Do what we say or your family will be dead. Do you have any comments on this disturbing but yet very serious issue that I think people need to be made aware of, especially people in the Trump community who worship Trump like he's the second coming and don't really know that he does have a few weak links that need to be addressed?
Well, everybody has weak links. I mean, everybody. He's a human. And I think treating him like God is ridiculous. Now, if that's different than God appointing him to do something, which I do believe that he did, like Moses. But see, you're not a Christian, so you wouldn't necessarily believe it that way. I also happen to be quarter Jew. Now, saying that, okay, I'm not offended by anything that you're saying, because every country in the entire world has a deep state, okay? Now, do I think that Netanyahu might be deep state? I do. I think he just might. But Trump has to deal with him. He doesn't really have a choice but to deal with them. And biblically speaking, since he's coming from a Christian background, and I will say this, I believe that our country was founded by God and guided by God, and the Constitution was guided by God through godly men. Okay, so I believe the real one, not the one that's the corporate one, which I think is what you were talking about. So that being said, Donald Trump also should know, and I believe he does know, that biblically speaking, God has a special place for Israel. That's why you can't go against the Israeli people. Now, I also have an issue with people calling them Zionists, because the actual term Zionist means you support Israel. What has happened is the same thing that the Democrats do. They hijack a word, they put a meaning to it, which isn't the correct meaning, and then they use it over and over and over again to make good words seem like a bad word. So the word Zionist means that you are in support of Israel, which means the people. Just like if I said, I'm in support of America. Well, are you in support of the deep state of America? No, but you're in support of the people who are the people who make up America, just like we are in support of the people who make up Israel. So that's a difference in terminology there. Now, there are certain things that Donald Trump has to deal with, and Netanyahu's one of them, to get stuff done. I wouldn't, if anybody comes up to me and tries to threaten me, I just laugh. Only because if God has assigned you a task, he's going to make a way for you to do it. And I think Donald Trump is very well aware that he doesn't have to be intimidated by stuff like that. God's going to take care of his family. God's going to take care of all the things that need to happen. And when his time is done, then, maybe he'll be assassinated. I don't know. If he goes off the wrong path, he certainly will be. But I'm not really worried about Donald Trump's demise or his family's demise, because I actually do think that God is facilitating this entire thing. I think that Donald Trump is extremely smart. I think that he knows the difference between a sovereign and a corporation thing. Because as the president, his actual title is CEO of the United States of America. That's his actual title. And he knows that. But because he has done certain things with taking the fringe off the flag, telling the Queen to get lost, getting back some gold from Switzerland, putting the Federal Reserve under the Treasury and getting rid of the central bank and all that, which I do believe he's doing, putting the IRS under the Treasury and all these other things. He's trying to wake up people to understand that they have the power, that people have the power. He knows that he's a leader of the land of people that are human, but he also recognizes that he's the CEO of a corporation. So what he's trying to do is get the people to wake up to those two things and understand their power. That's why when people say, oh, he needs to make an executive order and step in and do this stuff, and he's not doing it because he wants you to understand that you at your level can fix it. He's facilitated you to know that. He's facilitated you to understand that there's a difference between a sovereign, which he keeps saying, you people are sovereign. You're sovereign. You've got the power. The power is in with you. You can take back the government. He's trying to get them to understand. But he also is walking a thin line because he's got the deep state on one side where he's trying to take them down. And then he's got the other side where he's got to drip, 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 drip information to the people so they wake up. If he literally came out on day one and started telling all the people everything that's going on, yeah, these people are this, that people, those, it would be too much for people to handle. They wouldn't even, their brains couldn't even handle it. They can hardly handle what they're doing now. So I think he is a good guy. If he proves to be different, that would be amazing. But right now, I think he's doing exactly what the people want him to do. And I think the people who are complaining that were following him in the first place are just impatient. They wanted him to come in day one and start wielding power and putting people under arrest and everything without showing those who are not on his side, without showing them the problems, without showing them that they're slaves, without showing them these things. It's much better he's doing it by letting them hang themselves, by waking up people. Now he's got more support than he did when he was elected. And Joe Biden is just a clown in the basement. So that's what I think.
Yes, I cannot for the life of me imagine that Joe Biden would have any chance of beating Donald Trump in November. But what is going to happen in November? I mean, I got a person who I'm going to be interviewing on this show who was talking about how the Nisara GCR RV is going to be happening in November, and I hear that I'm like, oh my God, we've been down this road before. We've been hearing this currency reset's going to happen next Tuesday for so long. It's as annoying as it is ridiculous, and I don't even want to go down that road. But I mean, you have to think if there's going to be a currency reset in this country going on this year, how is that going to affect the election? And some people say Donald Trump will be like the last president. And well, the idea that we're in an American Revolution civil war up until that solar eclipse on April 8th, 2024, with Carbondale, Illinois being the crisscross point of that eclipse, and the one that happened in 2017, August. I plan to be in Carbondale, Illinois on that day. I can't imagine the gods are going to make it a cloudy day in that crisscross point. I missed it in 2017 when I went down to Charleston because it was the clouds ruined it. I got a nice consolation prize. I got to see my nephew. So, but still, I would have loved to see the eclipse. But then again, I guess the gods were telling me we're gonna ruin your chance to see this eclipse because this eclipse isn't what's important. The important one is the one that's happening on April 8th, 2024, because the word on the street is that eclipse will signify the end of the Roman Empire of the modern era that is the United States of America Corporation. And that also raises the question, does that also mean we're not going to have to deal with the powers that be Illuminati bloodlines anymore? Well, Brad Johnson, who channels Ladronis, he says, yeah, that's when basically the Illuminati is going to be out of power. Well, just because the United States, Roman Empire of the modern era, is out of power at that time doesn't mean that the Illuminati may not have control over other factions in other parts of the world. And, well, how much longer into the decade will we have to deal with them is another question worth asking. Well, you seem to be very patriotic, so I'm sure you're concerned mostly about America, but do you have anything maybe to offer about the global level? If America is going to end the empire, the American empire in 2024, what about the rest of the world? Are they going to still, like China and Israel, they're still under the thumb of the powers that be to the Illuminati factions to a great extent, hotspots there and whatnot. So, any comments?
Yeah, if you're gonna, I'm gonna speak on that biblically, even though I know that you're not a Bible person. I'm still gonna speak on that. So, biblically speaking, I don't think the Illuminati is going to be gone until Christ comes back, because that's what it says in the Bible. What I think is going on here, and because you got to understand that Donald Trump only has 8 years, all right? The first 8 years is exposing all of these people. I mean, the first 4 years is exposing all these people and getting people onto the idea that this is happening. And the second portion is going to be where there are actually high-profile arrests. But that doesn't mean that he's going to take down the whole entire Illuminati network globally. I think it's going to hurt him big time, but I don't think it's going to get rid of him. The other thing about the financial reset, I've heard that a million times too. The only thing I'm going to say about that is there is a bill in Congress that I believe was put there, I want to say March 21st, 2018, to bring back the gold standard, but it's on hold because Maxine Waters happens to be in charge. I can't even believe that I'm saying this, of the financial committee, because she's such a doofus. Anyway, she's in charge of the financial committee in the House, and that's where it was introduced. She's not going to do anything about that, because if she did something about that, that would take away her wealth, her personal wealth and power. And she doesn't want that to happen. She doesn't want people to be on her level. So it's going to be staying there until the House falls, which I will believe happen in November. And when the House falls, that's when I think the gold standard is actually going to be put in place. Because then you're going to have somebody in the Republican Party who is going to be in charge of that financial committee, not the Democrats, if the Democrats even exist, which I'm sure there's going to be a few, but it's going to be so few that it won't even make any difference at all, as far as I'm concerned. I do, but I don't think that you're ever going to get rid of all the evil, because in the Bible it is very clear that natural man is an enemy to God. That means you don't even need evil. You don't even need Satan to be an enemy to God. So you might not be as bad, but you're still not going to be just the natural man walking around is not going to be on God's side. That is clear. So, you know, no, I don't think that there's going to be some kind of like takedown of all the global evil or anything like that until Christ returns. When biblically speaking, there's supposed to be 1,000-year reign. But still, even during the 1,000-year reign, natural man, even though that Satan is bound up, natural man is still an enemy to God. So, like I said, I don't think you're going to get rid of all of it anyway. People have a choice, and God made it that way, that you get to choose whether or not you're going to be good or you're going to be evil, if you're going to follow Satan or you're going to follow God. That's the way it is. And he's not going to take that choice away from you. Then he would cease to be God.
Well said. All right. I think I'll one more very important subject I want to touch, and then after this, I'll give you the chance to get out anything you like, and then I guess we'll close out this interview. 2 hours, didn't go full 2 hours, but then again, doing 2 hour interviews has cost me a potentially big audience because people have lousy attention spans, and I've been doing shows 2 hours a lot to get out information, and that unfortunately has cost me a great size audience, as big as it could be. But anyhow, there is one thing I do want to raise about how I used to make a joke back in the day about this whole currency reset thing and how the best way to deal with it is. I often would say the best way I think to prepare for the currency reset, hypothetically, if you know when the currency reset is going to happen and when the move to the gold backed currency is going to happen and the dollar is going to be eliminated, the debts are going to be canceled and all that, we're going to have a debt jubilee and all. I think the best way to deal with that is to max out your credit cards, take out as much gold and silver as you can, but take out as many loans as you can to buy as much gold and silver as you can. Use your credit cards to get as much gold and silver as you can. And then when all the debt jubilees happen and all that, all the debts are going to be written off, and then you get to keep all that gold and silver, and it's all going to work out well and good for you. Well, I have since retracted that a bit and realized, well, apparently it's not going to work so well for you. I have actually reason to believe that for all intents and purposes, the credit card, you might say, is God's way of seeing how well you can manage karma. There was an instance where I, as well as some other folks in my family, got a large sum of money regarding some farm property in the New England area as part of a trust, and I got a check for about $16,000 several years ago. I immediately used that to pay off all credit card debts and bank loans that I had taken out to do what I do as part of my mission, which had put me in a lot of debt on this earth. And it's interesting how right after I pushed the pay off debt button on the computer screen, I got the worst headache ever. And then after that, there were some synchronicities that happened in my life suggesting things like karma to the head and all that, like resolving karma, and you're going to feel it through things like headaches and all that. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like telling me that this trust fund money going to me and me paying off the debts is at a spiritual level. It was to deal with some family karma resolution, but paying off those credit card debts allowed me to resolve karma to a great extent. And that means that that whole idea I had about maxing out your credit cards to buy as much gold and silver as possible and then not have to worry about it when the debt jubilee happens No, it doesn't work like that. From a spiritual perspective, you will have generated lots of bad karma for yourself by trying to cheat the system using credit card money to buy gold and silver. So that's the way I see it, and that's why I say don't do that. Pay off as much of your debts as you possibly can before you start using your credit cards to buy gold and silver, because karma resolution is more important than hoarding gold and silver. I know, being a Christian, you may not have the same opinions on karma, but this is what I say. Do you have any comments on this?
Well, first of all, I don't think you should be buying gold and silver because the Bible is very clear that that's going to be thrown in the streets and it's not going to have any value. So I don't think that that's a way to invest. I also think if you're going to use credit cards, you need to still live within your means because it's a smoke and mirror system no matter what you do. Okay? Now, what will I invest in that has to do with metal? Bullets. That's what I invest in. Bullets, things that I can trade. See, with a bullet, I can defend myself. I can get food. I can trade it if I want to. So to me, that's a better investment than gold and silver, because if I'm walking around in the forest, let's say, and I've got my backpack, but I don't have a sandwich or something, and you try to give me a lump of gold, I'm not going to be real happy about that if I'm hungry. But if you have some way to help me get food, I might trade you on that. You know, I might have something that I can trade with, and that might be all right. So I know from backpacking and doing all this stuff, the more weight you have on you, the harder it is to walk around. So like I said, if I'm going to have something that has any kind of weight to it, metal-wise, it's going to be in the form of a bullet. Does that make sense? I think it makes perfect sense.
Yes, and in regards to your claim that gold and silver, in the end, it's going to be worthless. Well, I beg to differ. Being a spiritual person, I've gotten a lot of sterling silver and even a small amount of gold plated 24 karat jewelry as well for spiritual purposes. And from a spiritual perspective, I have reason to believe that it has done me metaphysically well to have done some artwork putting all that sterling silver jewelry around my house. So even if you're not going to exchange it for a currency that's backed by the money, at the very least, it can have metaphysical properties to help you. That's not your field of expertise, so I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but I do, and I just wanted to point that out. But anyhow,
I actually do know that gold and silver do have different uses rather than just currency. I know that. But the Bible is talking about currency itself and the value as far as like being like the people who hoard it and stuff like that. There's a difference between using it for like weaponry, using it for things that you like artwork, vessels, different kinds of things. There's something different about that. And then also silver has a lot of qualities that people use for health. So in that regard, that's not the same thing.
yeah, that's I figured that. Good thing you pointed that out there. So this was a great interview. I'd like to give you the chance now to the last few minutes get out anything you like, your contact info, anything else you want to point out. Of course, people are going to say if you try to make a sales pitch out of your products, he's just a con artist, and as they've been saying forever. But I always give people that offer their products the chance to make a sales pitch out of it. On my shows. So if you want to do that, fine. I am not responsible for anything that happens to you or anybody else that is listening to this program. So just want to get that out. But then again, I want to be fair, give you the chance to make a pitch out of this. So anything you like, your contact info, your products and everything. Let's close this out.
Well, I don't really have a lot of products or anything like that. I mean, I help people be secured party creditors, but I like them to know what they're doing before they do that. So if anybody wants to read Redemption Manual 4.5, that's free. You can just get that online and download it as a PDF. That's going to bring you the closest to the understanding of being a secured party creditor and basically a sovereign person in the United States of America and actually around the world. That being said, if somebody actually knows what they're doing and they want to become a secured party creditor, that's fine. They can just email me at april@aprillajune.com, and I'll be more than happy to help them. But until they have an understanding, I usually really have them as any kind of a client or sell them anything, because if they don't understand what they're doing, there's no point in it. So I would say study. I'm going to give you some free sources that you can study, which are out there, easy to find. The Modern Money Mechanics, which is the Federal Reserve book. It tells you, they wrote it, and it tells you how money works. The Creature from Jekyll Island, you can get a free PDF on that if you can find it, which I did put it in the library on my thumb drive because I wanted to make sure that people had it. And also, there's a couple of really good videos out there, and those are referenced on my website at aprillajune.com. There's a Federal Reserve movie there and some other stuff that people can look at. And if they do want to become a secured party creditor and they know what they're doing, they can email me, and I have a red and a blue thumb drive. The red one is becoming a secured party creditor, which is the first thing that you got to do. And then I have a blue one after that, which is the executor over the trust that you just put yourself in charge of. So first you're taking it over, and then you're putting yourself as in the executive position. So those are the two things that I really have. That is, there's a $450 for each one. And then I also teach a class on 1099 OID and how to fill out the form, the mechanics. So you should already know what you should already be a secured party creditor if you're going to do a 1099 OID taxes, and you should already have been you should have already filed the paperwork in order to take that class, and they do that every other week. So, and it's only like a 2-hour class, but it's pretty informative, and we go through all the forms. So anyway, that's what I do, and I can certainly help people and answer their questions, but I don't charge for answering people's questions. I try to point them in the right direction.
Yes, and this was a very fascinating and informative interview. People can do whatever, make of it whatever they will. I will upload this to YouTube by midnight tomorrow. I am also in the process of uploading all my interviews as well to cost.tv because YouTube has demonetized me. Unfortunately, I did reapply, but they haven't gotten back to me in the 9 days it's been since I reapplied, and I don't know if they will. And cost.tv, the blockchain that works on, the monetary value from that is very, very minimal, and can only do hour uploads. I still haven't actually, the last interview I did with Sarah Westall, I still haven't even managed to get that on uploaded to cost.tv because I got a new computer and there's a whole process with the system I'm still trying to work out, but I will get this up to YouTube at the very least by midnight tomorrow, and I will send it to you, and you're more than welcome to post this out on the net, your version of it, kill two birds with one stone, and promote it and get this out. And hopefully there is some stuff that we talked about here that can throw a monkey wrench into the system of domination and control and get us to freedom a lot more faster than, well, sooner the better. So April LaJune, fascinating interview. Glad to have you on. Good luck. Take care. Wish you the best of luck, and all the best to you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.